Okay, it is September 3rd, 2019, and I continue with this project of going through my ethical presence manuscript and really looking at writing that was mainly on the Rick blog, maybe some other sources too. My writing from like 2015 and 2016. We just went through a stretch of uh, really two or three of these videos that were major revisions to the writing, a lot of improvised or talking around uh, the writing for a lot of transformational changes, both in my way of writing and also in my attitudes toward things and the content of things. Okay, so we've gone through that, but I looked this morning at the next pieces that come up here in the manuscript, and I actually think that they're pretty good. Um, they're good. So let's just get started with these pieces. The first one is called "The Best," and it starts with a quote from W. Somerset Maugham. It's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the best, you very often get it. Okay. Now my words. Our perception of the world is only as good as our consciousness of its possibilities. Most of us have had the experience of being rejected by a lover or job or social group and feeling the pain of losing, quote, the best thing that ever happened to us, end of quote, only to realize in time that our object of desire wasn't even very good. Conversely, some have had the experience of rejecting a lover, job, or social group, only to discover later the regret of missing out on a great opportunity for excellence of love, life, and thought. We get what we need and deserve. Points of rejection made by us or done to us are learning opportunities. There really are no mistakes. Life is just a big school, and we matriculate our way to greater understanding. The only things that we ever lose are our illusions. Mom knew what his best was from the inside out. He wanted the externals of his life to match the finer qualities of his soul. Apparently, he felt that he found it. And last night I looked at this and I thought to myself, this is good writing, but I don't know if I still believe it because it's an element of faith. And last night when I went to bed, I felt like I was 100 years old and that there really weren't any possibilities for me. And this morning, actually, the moment that I got out of bed, the moment I sat up and my feet hit the floor, a lightness came over me, and I believe what this says. So it's interesting. I'm sure that when I wrote this piece, I was writing it from the perspective of that I had gone through such a transition. And I felt like I came out on the other side. Where I'm at this moment is that I'm in the midst of a transition. But I can say that brief piece. I can read that brief piece with conviction. It is still what I believe. All right, this next section is called "The Elements of a Present Moment." 1, who is there? What human beings are present? 2, what is going on? The action is a deeper consideration than mere activity. Action is a deeper consideration than mere activity. 3, where is the moment? What physical, emotional, or existential place is present? And 4, what is your comment? Your response to the moment is part of the moment. The who, what, where, and comment are abstractions used for the purpose of understanding a seamless unity. A major breakthrough occurs when one simply is. Emphatic acceptance of the moment includes these aspects, obviously taken from my training in improvisational theater. And I think this combined with the best and that whole idea of transformation is I think I can say it's the way that I live my life and it's the way that I create my art. So the question that has come up, which has always galled me in a way, the question of why do you date everything? And this is the reason why I date everything because uh, because this work and this life is about transformation, and we exist on a shifting point. Okay, so I like that piece. All right, this piece uh, is called "Art Has Its Day in L.A." and I think it's the first piece that I wrote that I think has the character of the Rick blog. Uh, I'll just leave it at that and see if I have more to say about this. I wrote this in Los Angeles. Paul and I went out to Los Angeles, and I was invited to participate in some improvisation workshops with other Second City alumni, and I had what is my typical uh, homecoming with Second City alumni. There's a group of people that are very warm and like me and admire my work, and there's a group of people that are very negative about my work. And I was introduced at this workshop by the guy who was running the workshop. He said, "Here's a guy who's a lawyer or whatever, and he's just some guy that's here, and he's not really a professional, and he's not really good." And he had seen me at another one of these things where at a place where I did excellent work at this retreat, this play prop retreat, where the what this group was doing, and they were doing it again at this second meeting in LA, is improvising in order to create scenic material to use in scripted plays. So anyway, I had a rough afternoon with this character who was running the workshop, who just was, for whatever reason, he was very negative. And some of the people bought into what he was saying, and some of the people defended me. It was weird. But then we had an assignment where it was like bring in a piece of writing or something so that everybody could share what they were writing about. And at the time, I thought that this work would be in the context of a one-person show, one-man show, and I had done a one-man show basically with audiences of friends and not on that particular trip, but I did one at the Fanatic Salon in LA, and I had done one Judy's Beat Lounge at the Second City Training Center, and I did a few of them there actually. Uh, I did it I did it a lot of different places, and it culminated with the December 1st, 2017 show where I rented this really awful little space and friends came and they watched me, and that was actually the culmination of that. I think that one of the things that happened is that my work became it all became simplified and everything dropped away, and that's why it's just now the words on the blog in the written pieces and me doing these videos, and I don't think that if I did this in a theatrical space or any kind of reading space, I don't think anything would be more elaborate than that. I'm just not interested in the rest of it. But at any rate, this is the piece that I wrote. We were staying with friends, the friends that were hosting this improv workshop that I went to, and I wrote this on their kitchen table, basically. And one of the big bones of contention that this improv instructor had was that I speak freely about art, right? I mean, and he said it has nothing to do with art; it's just a craft. So I didn't even consciously write this piece in response to that. It's really not an argument, but it shows interestingly the dynamic that I have is that if I'm in a group and whether I'm accepted or not accepted by a group or a mixture like it was on this occasion, I can't help but always going to the fallback position of my personal voice. I can't go against where the direction that I personally am going in. I don't have conformity or in some cases adaptation in me, and of course that's because I'm a writer, I mean that's how it. But anyway, in this turmoil of being insulted at this improv workshop and having some people on my side and some people not, and all that, I wrote this piece, and I think the nature of this piece was the beginning of direction for the Rick blog, because I did a lot of writing, but a lot of the writing, like those pieces that I said that I did the videos about, where I said I am not at the place I was when I wrote these things, and I improvised pieces around that writing that I no longer ascribe to. This writing was that writing that was where I was trying to explain things to myself. This writing was actually like artistic writing, and consciously so, for the first time. Of course, it was misplaced to think that it would belong in a one-man show. It doesn't. It's not that kind of writing. But this was my voice came out a little bit more, with this piece. So this piece is called Art Has Its Day in LA. Paula and I had an art-filled day in Los Angeles yesterday. We saw the Turner exhibit at the Getty Museum, and we saw Robert Altman's masterpiece movie from the mid-1970s, Nashville, at the Arrow Revival House in Santa Monica. LA is a city of grandiose intentions betrayed. It sprawls in unfinished disrepair. If a hoarder's house became an urban landscape, it would be Los Angeles. One seedy building of past or imagined grandeur after another passed by us as we drove the crowded, impatient, and uncivil streets and boulevards. Every edifice screamed, "I can make a buck here, I can make a buck here." LA is a sprawling drunk who believes he is sober. Its attempts at dignity are pathetic and comical. I really like it. Oh, the humanity. And then there is the Getty. We park our hulking rent-a-car, a midsize SUV. The $15 is all that we will need to spend for our entire time at the museum. This one's on J. Paul Getty. The Getty is located on a hilltop. Visitors take a monorail from a valley to the pavilions. The hill is meticulously landscaped. The rail cars are spotless. The large crowd in our car is calm with happy and quiet anticipation. Evolved life reigns. Undenied animal natures gratefully subordinate themselves to the gods within. Not one shallow or restless breath is exhaled. The air and all minds present are clear. A community rises above its avarice and fear. The possible happens, a first moment of sobriety. Art need not be an escape, the cathedral that you are tossed to from the gritty sandstorm battle of what is called living. But it is just that, because we make it that way. We are all Angelinos. Philanthropy is civic-minded, quote, charity that bequeaths us momentary glimpses of our birthrights. Our moments of peace are gifts to us from the men like J. Paul Getty, who fouled our air in the first place. We have turned essential life into a beggar. Education, healthcare, art, culture has a pledge drive. The idea is that market forces will create wealth and men of profit will build all the infrastructure we need to sustain it. Our human needs will be met indirectly once we attain our desire for profit. But many stretches of Los Angeles look as worn out and deteriorated as the streets of the newly liberated republics of the former communist bloc countries of Eastern Europe in the 1980s. Turner and Nashville know that the denial of life is motivated by something less obvious and simplistic than political and economic ecology. Ideologies are sideshow distractions from the essential nature of us all, useful tools in our continuing effort to avoid real thought. We arrive at the top. Turner, on loan from the Tate in London, shows us how to be more effectively human. We have so much potential. Turner defies classification. Turner makes no accommodation for our acceptance or rejection. His paintings show a world with few boundaries, where one thing, a man, a whale, a mast of a ship, it really doesn't matter. One thing at a time stands out in defined relief. The voice on the iPod guide quotes Henry David Thoreau. It doesn't matter what you look at. What matters is what you see. Our world is as wise and clear and kind and good as we want to make it. Our only limitation is the depth of our perception. Nashville, a satire created in the 1970s, is timeless, with a message for any place and moment. Depth, perception. The film's central comment. Authoritarianism is chaotic, ironically. The despotic promise of order from political leaders brings disorder. The narcissism of self-involvement is exploited by those who crave power. Almost no character listens. Almost every character talks a lot, most often when other characters are talking. Almost everyone is either on stage looking to be pleased by the audience's approval or in the audience looking to be pleased by the performer's flattery. The mass cruelty hurts itself in the ignorant pursuit of a non-existent power, while the cunning manipulates it from a detached vantage point and dictates all its action. The mass is unaware of the lack of freedom until a trauma near the end of the movie, when it chooses the comfort of a life of denial of reality and a surrender of freedom and even self-interest for the delusion of non-existent pleasure and a good time. Nashville is Los Angeles, is Chicago, is America, is us. The Getty shows us what real life could be attached to the lie that it can only come to us as a gift from the cunning, detached voice of real power in Nashville. Turner shows us what freedom looks like for ourselves as individuals and by extension, our communities. He looks where he pleases and really sees. as does Robert Altman and company in Nashville. Art is mysticism plus craft. What do you see and what do you make of it? A painting, a movie, a monorail, a city, a world? Well, I'll tell you something. Reading through that, which by the way was written prior to Trump, in terms of prior to his announcement, even. This was written before he came down the escalator and said that he wanted to be president. I think that's great. I think that's a great piece of writing, and I think it's the best of the Rick Block. And I think pieces like it didn't show up till like 2019. Well, they showed up periodically, but I think this is where this is definitely where my writing was going, and I call this my improvised revolution, because the revolution is, I probably mentioned this like in a couple of paragraphs in the text, but Viola Spolin said that improvisation should turn into something else. Viola Spolin, improvisation for the theater, really the person who wrote the book about improvisational acting, the basis of my training. She said it should revolutionize itself, and she did not want it to become a religion, and she didn't want it to be static. She said it could lead to other things, and that's what happened on this trip. This trip to Los Angeles that led to me having that tough workshop, and then the following day sitting in front of the people in the workshop and reading this piece. That was the transformation that happened. I mean, basically, I am more accurately called a writer than an improviser. That's my improvised revolution. The next part of the manuscript plays into what I'm discussing here. And this is called Transformation is the Soul of Improvisation. Exploring and heightening a moment leads to its transformation into the next moment. The nature of our lives actually changes by the degrees of how we intensely and emphatically accept them. Acceptance of a moment may or may not include agreement with it. We discover who we are by honoring those responses. This next piece, Beginner's Mind. Improvisation is not about inventing yourself and making a new world. Improvisation is a journey of constant discovery. Improvisational intelligence is shown in how you deal with what you don't know. Improvisation is an act of humility, openness, and courage. An improviser perceives the world as round and bravely sails toward the horizon. If she was inaccurate in the detail of her perception, she falls off the edge of the earth, reassesses her position, and soldiers on. Failure is only a negative if we are ashamed of experiencing it. Failure is only a negative if we are ashamed of experiencing it. Failure, like love, changes everything. A plan is a great thing until it proves itself to be unrealistic. Improvisation is a quest for the real, not make-believe. Our worthy imaginings are the seeds of expansion of reality, not escapes from it. Okay, well, the themes continue. This next piece is called The Relationship Between Art and Craft. Terry Gilliam. That's the title, The Relationship Between Art and Craft, Terry Gilliam. Terry Gilliam was an illustrator. When he joined Monty Python's Flying Circus, he became an animator. He learned the rudiments of animation, and his initial work for Python was simple, crude, and effective. Gilliam became a film director. His first film was Time Bandits. He imagined elaborate special effects. He had a limited budget. So he learned about puppetry and primitive mask work created by different cultures and devised new and inexpensive ways to create his desired images on film. Now Gilliam was an illustrator, an animator, a sketch comedian, a film director, a puppeteer, a maker of masks, and a creator of special effects. His experience, curiosity, and necessity led him to the creation of a new craft that merged all of his skills and interests. Gilliam always starts with what he wants to say. What he wants to say starts with his personal experience, his thoughts and feelings about life. He transforms those responses to the world into fantasy, his genre of choice. Gilliam trusts that what is true for him is true for everyone on some level. In the process, a new way emerges that is different from personal narrative. Then he finds a way to adapt his wild images into a concrete craft. And he takes what he knows about craft and learns more. His new craft becomes something even more. It becomes tone and style, an original way of expressing. Now, the way the story is told becomes a means of Gilliam relaying his truth to the audience. The line between art and craft is completely obliterated. Craft is developed simply by the urgency with which the artist wants to talk to the audience. There is no longer what works. There is only, does it connect? Do viewers think and feel? Einstein said that imagination is far more important than knowledge. The raw material of thought and feeling is far more important to an artist than rules about craft. Rules that are periodically destroyed when a passionate artist like Gilliam finds a new way better suited to tell his story. A good artist can always find the situationally proper choice of craft and what he already knows and what he needs to learn. I met Gilliam once many years ago. He struck me as a naive amateur, and I mean that as high praise. Gilliam was wide-eyed and ready to learn everything his environment had to say to him. He watched us do a set at Second City, and he was surprised that we shoehorned scenes we had been working on for months to audience suggestions. He had watched us quite innocently trying to figure out how improvisation was done. And the reason why he made his mistake, which sounds like, well, that's incredibly naive, is because he's so brilliant, he could improvise like that. I mean, his first drafts did look like that. So, and the naivete that he had was that he was dealing with people on the same level that he was on. He seemed confused because he was probably calculating how our technique could be applied to his storytelling. And our dishonesty meant that he had to discard his conclusions. I remember he looked hurt when he found out that this improv set, it really wasn't improvised. The greatest craftsmen who make art are always novices, inhabiting what the Zen Buddhists call beginner's mind. That's a good line. It's worth repeating. The greatest craftsmen who make art are always novices, inhabiting what the Zen Buddhists call beginner's mind. Art teachers of any kind should never tell students how to do it. They should attempt to facilitate the students' discovery of their own thoughts and feelings, their own preferred genres and formats and skills that they're good at, and be interested in learning so that those students can discover their authentic stories and voices. Okay, I'm going to stop this installment here because I think that this really, up to this point, captures that moment, that my improvised revolution, the revolution that brought me to a different place and led me to leaving the group that I had identified with.